Raman, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Murli-san. Thank you.
Lovely to see you
Good
and
afternoon.
good afternoon, everyone. Raman, I mean, first your thoughts, if I will. There's a freewheeling chat, and I want your thoughts on ADAS and what really, what it really implies to you as a CTO. The overall trends that you see happening, and your views on it.
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for having me here, Dupangsha-san and Murli, and the other Murli. So thank you for having me here today. It's nice to be here. And this is a seminar on ADAS and future technologies. So I think one thing is very clear that in the future technologies are very varied which are coming in. But at the core of it, sustainability and safety for mobility is key. So you see a lot of technology which is coming in from a sustainability point of view and also from a safety point of view. And India being having one of the largest uh, accident and fatality rate, we have, I think, if you just see the numbers, on a daily basis, about 400 plus people die, and that's a huge number. And the recent, the railway accident, the unfortunate accident which happened was about 275, and that itself has, raised eyebrows about safety. And so I believe that safety for India is a very important aspect because everybody would like to move in a safe, comfort, convenient manner. And and safety, when we look at it's predominantly people talk about passive safety and talk about airbags and seatbelt, but there is a large component of active safety also, which is very, very important, which can actually save lives. And ADAS is one such intervention which is there. And Government of India, uh, in its wisdom, has already made ABS as a standard equipment for passenger vehicles. And now we are talking about ESC, and as Maruti Suzuki, if you look at, we already have implemented ESC in most of our models. The next step, of course, is ADAS, where safety, from an active safety perspective, it goes to the next level. And but one thing I would like to say here is that India has a very varied mobility, spectrum. So from a two-wheeler, a bicycle, to pedestrian, to public transport, to passenger vehicles, to and so on. And if what we are talking about, if you just look at private transport, it's about 15% of India, how moves is about 15%. Out of that, 12% is two-wheeler and 3% is four-wheeler. With that, we are having so many accidents. And if you look at vulnerable road users, which is basically the two-wheelers, the bicyclists, and the uh, pedestrians, they constitute about 65% of the fatalities. And so ADAS does help in finding some interventions for active safety. But having said that, as I believe that functionalities which have been developed, keeping a Western or advanced country ecosystem and mobility in mind, may not, cannot be replicated immediately, and so with as it is as a cut and paste to our Indian context, especially because of the wide spectrum of mobility.
Well, in a way, therefore, are you perhaps sounding out a note of caution that it should be horses for courses and a template should be perhaps more specific to India and that ADAS really may not be the sole solution going forward?
I'm not saying that it should be a sole solution. I'm just saying that you need to do adequate evaluation of the technologies which are available. And ultimately, when we are going to start off with the figure that, okay, you're having 400 fatalities on a daily basis. Purpose is not to bring technology just for the purpose because technology is available, but what is the merit of that, and is the accidents and the fatality is going to reduce. Are we able to address that? And that's somewhere I think one of the is the key point, which I think that we all as a society, as OEMs, as auto component manufacturers, as test agencies, as government and regulators, all need to look at it together and find solutions which are going to be making sure that the end objective is clear: to reduce fatalities, reduce road accidents. Anything in that direction needs a lot of effort in terms of data analysis, accident analysis, finding the right technology, and finding the right solution, and then regulating that accordingly so that you can actually achieve that end objective.
Would I be right in assuming that perhaps one of the realities of India is the whole aspect of cost, because investing in technology means increased costs, and we're also dealing with a market that is reasonably price sensitive, where seriously per capita incomes cannot be compared to advanced countries of the world?
Well, India is, at a stage where our GDP per capita is at a much lower level than the advanced countries or developed countries. So having said that, that reflects in the way in which our pricings are in terms of mobility. And pretty much the population, if you see, it reflects clearly that a majority of the population of the private transport is two-wheelers. And I believe that anybody who wants to have an economic activity has to move from point A to point B for his economic activity or for meeting, for employment. And he needs a safe, convenient kind of a mobility. And today, our per capita income finds a solution that is where the large population is moving to. And there is a population which is moving to four-wheelers. But the population is still low. We have a very low penetration of four-wheelers today per 1,000. It's just about 30 plus. In a developed country or Europe or US, it's maybe 600, 700. Even our neighboring countries or, say for an ASEAN country, it will be much, much higher. So that kind of reflects on the population which is there. So 5, 7 years back, 8 years back, our average price for a four-wheeler was roughly in the range of about maybe around 500,000 rupees. And now today it's got pushed to almost 900,000 rupees or so. And that, if you can say roughly maybe about $10,000, $11,000. Average price or ticket price for a European vehicle would be maybe about 20,000 odd dollars or so. So I think that kind of brings the difference of how sensitive it is. And as India, anything which we do here, I believe that affordability is key. Mobility, whether it's mobility, whether it is your mobile phone, or whether it is anything. One thing is there that India adopts to technology very fast. Having said that, it adopts only if it's at a particular price point, and Indians are very, very price sensitive. So if they are price sensitive, we have to be ensuring that we also have to have products which can meet that requirement. And what is happening is that regulatory requirements, aspirations of the customer, looking at key features or new features which are need to be put onto the vehicle, because that's the ask of the customer, is kind of pushing up the price point. And if you can see 5 lakh to 10 lakh, about 9-10 lakh rupees, and that's maybe because of the inflation, or in terms of raw material prices, in terms of the electronic component which is going into it, the regulatory component which is going into it, the technology which is going into it. All of that is contributing to this change in price. And so, which is a fact that the entry segment is somewhere shrinking today. And so a Alto, which was about 300,000 rupees at one point of time, is now 400,000 plus. And so that segment of up to 600,000 or so is kind of reducing, and the bigger vehicles are kind of moving up. And that's where the conundrum is, that your the two-wheeler to the four-wheeler, the gap is increasing. And so one could ask that which is safer, two-wheeler or versus a four-wheeler, and where should one move to? And I think that everybody would understand it, that where it is safer.
But when you spoke about costing, seriously, I mean, Maruti Suzuki is right up there when it comes to frugality and cost competitiveness. And now at a global level, you also have Toyota as an ally. So could you give us some kind of a indication when it comes to issues on safety, when you bring those two massive advantages together? I mean, an ally, and of course, the more important part is the kind of cost structure you built over the years and done it so successfully. Could you give an idea of what kind of perhaps safety solutions you'll be looking at bringing to the table, which could be realistic for the Indian market?
Well, I think we started in an era when it was everything was at a premium, or it was in times of scarcity, scarcity of foreign exchange, to a age where we are at everything is a plenty. Okay, so that's a change which has happened in the last 4 decades, and I've seen that. That was a time when we don't have foreign exchange to get kits from Suzuki in order to produce vehicles, because there was a cap on the limit of foreign exchange one could get as a manufacturer. That propelled us to develop a domestic component industry and localize parts. And that is something which I think today has benefited the auto industry and a lot of players who came in much later to harness that power of the supplier base to be able to develop vehicles and do localization and move from there to the next level. So I think what I'm trying to say is that the cost is a key, and the localization and doing that has enabled us to be competitive in a way, to be able to serve the Indian customer. And I think that continues. But having said that, the challenge, of course, is that when you are always, when technology comes at a premium, and there is always a development which is there. And as engineering, it's always that, you need to look at a future technology which is relevant. And we as engineers always look at it as a challenge, that there is a problem statement for the customer. How do you find a solution which is optimum, which can meet the customer's need, the latent requirement, stated, unstated, so to speak, and then make it also affordable and also democratize the technology in a way, so that you can, kind of, the cover the width and breadth of the customer in a sense. So I think that's something which we have to do. The other thing is that you talked about Toyota. And today, as Suzuki and Toyota working on a global level, we are looking at new technologies which are going to benefit India. And this is not an example which is related to ADAS, but it's about sustainability and about our goals of going towards carbon neutral. So the new technology of hybrid technology which has been brought in through our, our collaboration at the global level with Toyota, this technology has come into India. And what is that doing? And what is it has about 35% lower CO2 than a conventional engine. So, and it works at least at a 30 to 40% at any point of time in the city roads on a EV mode. It doesn't require any charging infrastructure. It is self-charging. And so the merit of that is that you're able to bring down the carbon footprint. So I think alliances today are important, and it's an era where it is you cannot go alone, but it's all about co-creation and collaboration. And it's not that today technology resides with the OEM. Technology resides today with suppliers. And more so today, there is a lot of startup ecosystem which is now developing technology in a big way. And OEMs have no choice but to also collaborate with them, co-create with them, and move forward. Take example of, you know, we talked about ADAS. If you take an example of that, it's a driver drowsiness. So you can have actually, and I can give this example. This is about 5-6 years back. I had gone to Silicon Valley. I went to see a startup. What was the startup trying to do at that point of time? Was trying to do recognition of the eye to see the driver behavior and the algorithm to be improved, so that you can, the various use cases, you can kind of improve that development of that algorithm. And so that's, I think what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of technology which is there today, which is coming into the into the OEM space, which is developed by not a traditional OEM or as a auto component manufacturer, but by somebody else. And that level of complexity is kind of coming into the vehicle. And so the challenge always is to the system to learn and for it to always recognize it rightly and not give a false positive. And that's where the challenge is in our ADAS system today, as far as India is concerned. And that requires, I believe, a lot more testing, a lot more evaluation of the use cases, what should be turned on and what cannot be turned on, what could be a potential enabler for reducing accidents and benefit to the customer, and what could be a potential irritant which actually may have to be switched off by a customer. So, you need to distinguish this in the technology, especially from a ADAS perspective.
That's indeed food for thought. Raman-san, for someone like you who's been seriously a veteran of Maruti Suzuki, do you believe that this decade, or really the era you're in right now, the coming years, are perhaps the most challenging, the most disruptive in your career, where the learning where the lessons just seem to be changing almost every day, where the dynamics are immense. And so I'm curious, I'm sure everyone would like to have your thoughts on that.
I think it's for all the people in this room and people who are going to contribute to this industry in the next decade or 2 decades. I think it's a great time to be as part of the auto industry, is what I believe. Why I say that, complexity has increased. We're talking about carbon neutrality, we're talking about safe mobility, we're talking about new modes of mobility, we're talking about new technologies, we're talking about a lot of software coming into it, a lot of electronics coming into it. The complexity has kind of, mushroomed. So what of that is two things is throwing up for the engineers is, one is a lot of challenges, but a huge amount of opportunities. And that is, I believe, the key for any engineer is to have a very uh, uh, challenging situation and to be, continuously looking at how to improve that situation, and that, that's something which I believe helps and motivates the engineer to do better and gives him sleepless nights to find the solution. I think the next decade is definitely going to be a huge opportunity and a huge challenge and a huge amount of learning and a huge amount of development of technology, so to speak, where one would be creating a lot more, is what I believe.
I'll slip in one more question before I throw open the floor to the audience. I'm also curious, your hirings must have changed dramatically. I mean, across the world right now, people talk about not hiring engineers, but people from with mechatronics, smart people in software, the IT industry, and with that comes the reality of paying them much, much more. So your own thoughts on this arena that's changing so rapidly when it comes to finding talent, hiring, and whether it's much, much tougher than it takes.
Well, for engineering organization, talent is key. I think that's no-brainer that and they the challenge is the variance of capability and skill which is required to be able to stitch together and integrate technologies into the vehicle is where the challenge is. The unknowns are huge, and with the software becoming more complex and with many multi, uh, you know, multiple, controllers needing to talk to each other. Uh, uh, the the development of the software is becoming more challenging, and so therefore, uh, and I'm sometimes asked, I was recently asked that, okay, when will we, have a, over there updates and where automobile is going to be operating like a mobile phone. I think we have to go towards that, where uh, updates of software would happen uh, on the go for an automobile too. No, I'm saying all this. What I'm trying to say is that a traditional mechanical engineer uh, is required in the industry for sure. But what is happening is that what was 10 years back, 20 years back, 30 years back, the kind of scope which was there for an engineer and the fields which one would be studying, those itself have actually multiplied. And because that of that multiplication, because that is the need which is there of the industry. So trying to get that and trying to, working in an automobile and a production unit is necessarily not a very, what would you say, glamorous uh, kind of a profession. Uh, and we've seen this, and some of my colleagues are there in the audience and they know this, that we have many graduate engineers who come every year. Maybe we take 100 engineers or 150 engineers. There would be about 25-30% of them, they would just leave in 2 years' time. And where are they going? If traditionally, they go to a management institute and want to do an MBA. And definitely the finance and the marketing is more lucrative and glamorous, so to speak, compared to a nuts and bolts engineering job. So I think that's where the challenge is. But having said that, that opportunity is huge, and I believe that the motivation for the engineer to find a solution is what carries him forward. I think so. That aside, and that's why a lot more still continue and grapple with the uh, with a challenge and find opportunities and grow in the organizations. I think that's something which will continue, and I think enough opportunities are going to be there. Also, the fact that the knowledge worker is going to become more important in the R&D centers going forward. Skill capability is going to definitely find a place, because that's something which is not going to be available and it's scarce. So therefore, developing that talent is where the challenge is, developing the funnel and getting the input, uh, acquiring the manpower and training them and retaining them is becoming, key. And because in some of these areas, the skill level is niche and less available, it's always often open for poaching at much higher, remunerations. And so I think that's something which auto industry and many of the R&D centers are seeing today. But having said that, I think organizations are changing, making uh, the work more attractive, motivating it, and also uh, matching it as far as the other parts of the, whatever is required for the other part for retention of people. So I think that's something which organizations need to continue to do. But yes, having said that, that's a huge challenge going forward for any R&D or auto industry.